Middle school readers deserve classrooms where reading feels meaningful, engaging, and achievable. Welcome to the Middle School Cafe podcast, where practical ideas and thoughtful conversations help you build confident readers. Here's your host, Carolyn Wall.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I hope you've had a chance to enjoy at least part of your summer. For many of you, summer break is coming to an end, and for some of you, it already has. My students don't return until after Labor Day, so I still have a little time before the school year officially begins. Right now, though, I'm in the middle of scoring student portfolios from student teachers who completed them over the summer. It's one of those tasks that takes a lot of time, but it's also one I really enjoy. I get to see the lessons they've planned, the growth they've made, and the excitement they have about having their own classrooms. Their enthusiasm is contagious, and it always reminds me of how exciting the beginning of a new school year can be. As we're getting this year started, I thought today would be a great time to talk about class routines. Whether you've already been with students for a few weeks or you're still putting the finishing touches on your classroom, the routines we establish early in the year can make a big difference in how smoothly everything runs. Today, I wanted to share 5 routines that I intentionally teach every year. They're simple, practical, and they've helped make my classroom more organized and predictable for both me and my students. Hopefully, they'll give you a few ideas to think about, or maybe even remind you of a routine that's worth revisiting with your own class. The first routine is your arrival routine. I know that probably isn't a surprise, but I really do think those first few minutes set the tone for the day. When students walk into your class, they should know exactly what they're expected to do without having to ask. The less time students spend wondering what to do, the more smoothly class gets started. One thing that's always helped me is having the agenda and directions posted where students can easily see them as they walk into the room. It serves as a reminder of what's happening that day and reinforces the routine I've already taught. Pair that with a consistent warm-up activity, and before long, students begin class with very little prompting from me. That's exactly what I'm aiming for. Those first few minutes are valuable. While students are settling into their warm-up, you have an opportunity to greet students at the door, take attendance, answer a quick question, or check in with a student who might need a little extra support before class begins. Instead of spending those first few minutes trying to get everyone's attention, the routine is already doing much of that work for you. The key is to teach this routine just like you would teach an academic skill. Even in middle school or high school, we can't assume students automatically know our expectations just because they're older. Every class is different, and every teacher has their own routines. I like to take a little time during those first few days to explain exactly what I want students to do when they enter the room. We model it together, talk through it, and then practice it. If it doesn't go perfectly the first time, that's okay. I stop, reteach it, and try again. I found that those few extra minutes early on save me a lot of time later in the year. Once students understand the routine and it becomes a habit, you'll spend far less time answering the same questions, redirecting students, or waiting for everyone to get settled. Those few extra minutes you spend teaching the routine during the first week will pay you back over and over again throughout the year. I'll put a few resources and blog posts in today's show notes if you're looking for ideas. Now, let's move on to the second routine, your independent reading routine. If you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you probably knew this one was coming. Independent reading has always been an important part of my class. One thing I've found is that students benefit from understanding exactly what independent reading looks like and what it doesn't. Again, it's easy to assume that because we teach middle school, students should know what we mean by independent reading. But the reality is that every classroom is different, and students need to learn what independent reading looks like in your class. Students need to know your expectations. Where do they get their books? What should they do if they forget one? What happens when they finish a book? What does successful independent reading look like? The more questions you answer before students ever begin reading, the less time you'll spend answering them later. Instead of stopping to explain procedures every day, students can focus on what really matters, reading. I also think it's important to model what successful reading time looks like. We can't assume students automatically know how to stay focused, avoid distractions, or build reading stamina. Those are skills that develop with practice. I like to start with shorter reading sessions at the beginning of the year and gradually build from there as students become more comfortable with the routine. Another strategy that's worked well for me is using a simple rubric as a self reflection tool for independent reading. It gives students an opportunity to think about how they're using their reading time. Are they staying focused? Are they making the most of those minutes? Are they reading in a way that's helping them grow as readers? The rubric isn't there for a grade. It's there to help students self assess how they're using their reading time. It also takes some of the pressure off you because instead of constantly reminding students to stay on task, you can simply point them back to the rubric. It keeps things consistent. Students have a clear picture of what successful independent reading looks like, and over time, they begin taking more ownership of their reading time. The third routine I teach is focused around discussions. Whether it's a quick turn and talk or a whole class discussion, I think it's important to teach students how discussions look in your classroom. Just like independent reading, we can't assume students automatically know what a productive discussion looks like. Early in the year, I like to keep discussions fairly low risk. Sometimes it's as simple as asking students to turn to a partner and answer one question about what we've just read or learned. The goal is simply to get students comfortable sharing their thinking with someone else. As students become more confident, we can gradually build from there. Maybe it's adding sentence starters to help students respond to one another, encouraging them to build on a peer's idea, or asking them to support their thinking with evidence. Those are skills that develop over time, and like any routine, they get stronger with practice. One thing that's helped me is giving students a consistent structure for discussions. When they know how to take turns, how long they'll have to talk, and what they're expected to accomplish, conversations tend to stay more focused. Instead of wondering what they're supposed to be doing, students can focus on the discussion itself. I also think it's okay if discussions feel a little awkward at first. For many students, especially those who are quieter, speaking up in front of peers can feel uncomfortable. The more opportunities they have to practice in a supportive environment, the more natural those conversations become. Routine number 4 has to do with how students get help. This is one of those routines that can save you a surprising amount of time during the school day. Students are always going to have questions, and that's okay. The challenge is making sure they know what to do when they need help. It really doesn't matter what routine you choose as long as it's easy and consistent. Some teachers use an Ask 3 Before Me system, where students try 3 things before coming to the teacher. That might mean rereading the directions, checking the board, asking a classmate, or using another classroom resource. Other teachers use exit directions, where they post a list of steps students should follow whenever they need help, giving students a visual reminder before they ask a question. I've seen both approaches work really well. The important thing is that students know the process and use it consistently. When students understand the routine, they begin relying on it instead of relying on you. When they're unsure what to do, they already have something to fall back on instead of immediately raising their hand. That helps students become more independent, and it also frees you up to spend more time helping the students who really need your attention instead of answering the same procedural questions over and over. Like the other routines we've talked about today, this one takes a little practice during those first few weeks. But once students know the process, it quickly becomes part of how your classroom works. The fifth and final routine I want to share today has to do with how class ends. I think those last few minutes of class are just as important as the first few. It's easy to let the bell become the signal that class is over, but I've always found it helpful to have a consistent routine that wraps everything up. For me, that usually means taking a minute or two to reflect on what we learned, answer one final question, or preview what's coming the next day. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate. Sometimes it's an exit ticket, sometimes it's a quick discussion. Other times, it's simply asking students to share one thing they learned or one question they still have. I also like to build organization into that routine. Before students leave, they put materials away, make sure their workspace is picked up, and check that they have collected all their personal belongings. It only takes a minute or two, but it helps make the transition smoother and prevents those last-minute scrambles as students head out the door. Having a consistent ending routine helps students recognize that learning doesn't end the moment they're packing up their backpacks. It also gives you one last opportunity to check for understanding, answer any final questions, and make sure everyone leaves knowing what's coming next. Before long, students know exactly what those last few minutes look like. Just like your arrival routine helps start class smoothly, a consistent ending routine helps everyone leave feeling organized and ready for the next day. All right, let's quickly recap the 5 routines we talked about today. First, establish a clear arrival routine so students know how class begins. Second, intentionally teach your independent reading routine so students understand what reading looks like in your class. Third, create consistent expectations for class discussions so students know how to participate respectfully and productively. Fourth, have a routine for getting help that encourages students to think through simple questions before coming to you. And finally, end every class period with a consistent closing routine so students know how to wrap up and leave prepared for the next class. As we wrap up today, I want to leave you with one final thought. Teaching routines takes time and it takes practice. Don't be surprised if you're 3 or 4 weeks into the school year and you're still stopping to remind students, reteach a routine, or practice it again. That's completely normal. It's also okay to realize that a routine isn't working and make a change. Sometimes you'll discover there's a better way to do something, or you'll find a routine that fits your students a little better. Just make sure you've given the original routine enough time. Students need an opportunity to learn it, practice it, and settle into it before you decide whether it's working. The important thing is to stick with it. Every time you stop to reinforce a routine, you're investing in the rest of your school year. As those routines become familiar, students spend less time wondering what to do and more time focusing on learning. Those few extra minutes you spend teaching and practicing routines now will pay off all year long. They create consistency, build student independence, and allow you to spend more time teaching instead of managing the little things. All right, everyone, that is it for us today. Thank you for joining me. I hope these 5 routines have given you a few ideas as you begin planning for the new school year. If you're looking for additional support, be sure to check out today's show notes. I'll link to some of my favorite blog posts, podcast episodes, and classroom resources if you're looking for more ideas as you plan your routines this year. Next time, we'll continue our back to school series by talking about warm-up routines. I'll share ideas for creating warm-ups that reinforce skills, encourage students to think, and become a meaningful part of your daily classroom routine. And whether you've already welcomed students back or you're still enjoying a few more days of summer, I hope you have a wonderful start to the new school year. Here's to a year filled with great books, meaningful conversations, and students who continue growing in confidence. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Middle School Cafe podcast. New episodes are released on the first and third Tuesday of each month. Be sure to follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. Visit middleschoolcafe.com for today's show notes and links to everything mentioned in the episode. We'll see you next time.